Brought to you by the Capital One Saver Card. With the Capital One Saver Card, you earn unlimited 3% cash back at grocery stores and on dining, entertainment, and popular streaming services. That's unlimited cash back on ordering takeout from home, or unlimited cash back on tickets to concerts and games. So grab a bite, grab a seat, and earn unlimited 3% cash back on food and fun with the Capital One Saver Card. Capital One. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Welcome back to Inside the Oval. I'm Kai Binetti, the Denise DeBartolo York Fellow, and your host for today's episode. Welcome back to part 2 of our series on interviewing, resumes, and networking. I'm joined again by Emily and CJ.
Try it this way.
Well, I actually do. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I do, because I think that I think one of the pieces that we haven't talked about and is very important, and I would even say I almost talked about this near the beginning when you asked about interviews, specifically about how to get into sports when you are transitioning. I think one of the missing pieces is networking. Mm-hmm. I think that it is 100% important especially if you're trying to switch careers. If you are trying to switch careers into sports or any career, it's about networking. Mm-hmm. And how people go about that can be key to whether you end up being successful in switching over to a different into a different world of work. So, and also I think it's for people who don't have a lot of experience as well. I think that those two groups specifically really need networking and really need to understand what networking is. And I know that one of the reasons why Kaya got this job was because of her networking skills. Mm-hmm. So I think we could have a really great, quick conversation about that. And would you like to talk, Kaya, about some of the networking that you've done?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like you said, I think it was something that really helped me get here and get my role as the Denise DeBartolo York Fellow. So when I was in college, I was an athlete, and I knew that, I didn't want to leave the sport. I didn't want to leave track behind after the 4 years of college. So I kind of, later in college, maybe it was like the end of my sophomore year, I was like, how can I kind of maintain this, this like team aspect, everything I love about being a part of something that's bigger than myself. And the only answer really was to work in sports. So I kind of knew at the time that that's where I wanted to be. But at end of my sophomore year, other than being an athlete on the track team, I didn't really have any experience working in sports. So I think for me, I kind of took a step back and was like, okay, I need to make a plan. How am I going to get there? And I'm not going to get there just by saying, I'm an athlete, I love sports. You're not going to hire me then. So I think for me, I first started...
Unless you put romance novels on.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I first started off by doing research. I think I just looked up, I don't know, what opportunities are there for women interested in sports, like a bunch of different things. And I stumbled upon the NFL Women's Forum, which is a program run initially started by Sam Rappaport, who was the senior director of DEI at the NFL League office. I think she no longer works there, but she started this program where they invited 40 women across the country who were interested in sports and who typically most of the time worked for their college sports teams or worked in college sports. They brought them to the NFL Combine and gave them the chance to, network with individuals from across the league. So when I was there, I met with presidents and their owners, and there were just people from all different areas. So I had seen that, and I was like, okay, how can I get here? My school didn't even have a football team, funny enough. So I reached out. To Sam early in my junior year of college, and she responded. She said, I said something about being very interested in working in sports, and this is before I had any real sports experience in terms of professional.
What was your major?
My major was double majored in philosophy, politics, and law, and political science. So
smarty pants.
Again, nothing involved with sports. I took no classes. And I just wrote to her saying, this is where I want to be. I just told you guys, I'm an athlete. This is all I want. I really want to be a part of this, and I think your program would really help me to get there. And she responded. I think she really liked my drive, and she said, hi, Kaya, we've already selected the 40 applicants for this year, but I really appreciate, the effort that you put into this. Please check back in next year, and we'll consider your application. So fast forward a year later, I had had sought after, the summer before I reached out, so my junior summer of college, I had worked for the New York Jets. So I knew I needed some type of sports experience on my resume. And I had gotten that just by, again, reaching out to the Jets and kind of figuring out what internship opportunities they had. So I got that internship.
What was the title?
That was game day and event operation, I think. So just helping out with, preseason and training camp. I think it was training camp intern or something like that. Operations. Yeah. So it was a lot of just like really helping with like the setup and tear down of training camp and, helping out on like whatever they needed with like the day to day with that and all of the events that were held during the summer at the Jets training facility. And then, so I'm in college, I'm a senior, and I'm kind of at the place where I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? Still want to work in sports. I loved my experience with the Jets a lot. And it kind of solidified, that desire to be there. So I reached out to Sam again, and I, kind of said a similar thing. Like, I wanted to check back in. This is something I still really want, and I really think could help benefit me in my professional career. And then fast forward a few months later, actually, they did it in a really funny way. They said, hey, we're having an interview for this. So they got me on the phone. I was so nervous, like we just talked about. It was an interview, so I thought. And then on the interview, they said, like a few sentences in, I gave my tell me about yourself kind of spiel. And then she said, we're actually not here to talk about this. We're here to tell you you got accepted to the 2025 NFL Women's Forum. And I actually started crying. They recorded it on the video, but yeah, so then afterwards they explained, like, you got this because you're the only woman in the cohort, the 40 women, who has no experience working for their college team. But we gave you this because of the effort you put in, because of the way you sold yourself and showed why it mattered to you. And then fast forward a few months later, I'm at the NFL Combine, and I'm meeting all these different people. It was exactly what I thought. It really gave me the opportunity to, really network and be in a place that was built for not only like people interested in the sports industry, but for women, and just, I don't know, being in that place was amazing. And later that night, I met CJ, who is sitting across from me at a women's networking event. And I'd also researched my current role now, because again, I think a common theme was that I was always really doing research in terms of what was out there. I didn't want to just wait for something to pop up on LinkedIn, but I wanted to be prepared for when it was opening. So with the Denise DeBartolo York Fellowship, I knew exactly the month it was going to open because I had found when other previous DDYFs had posted that their acceptance was and things like that. So I remember asking you, when is this application going to open? I'm really interested in it. And you said it'll open soon. Yeah. And then right around then it opened up and I applied, and you already had known that I was interested in it. So I'm sure that helped you to remember who I was. And that was really the story of how I got here. It was just through networking and meeting people and being true to myself and working really hard.
I don't know that I've ever told you this, Kaya. So I don't know if you know, I screened. So CJ gave me maybe 50 resumes or something. So for the DDYF, Christina, CJ, gave me about 50 resumes. And so I had to go through them. And so I
never, ever tell them who I've met or anything. Yeah.
And so I take that, specifically the DDYF and the internships, I take that, it weighs on me as a responsibility to give it more than 7.4 seconds, right? Like we talked about that earlier. And so what I did for the DDYF is I made myself a grid. And so I made myself a grid of the different areas. So ops, marketing. For anybody who doesn't know about the DDYF, it's a rotational fellowship where folks get an opportunity in operations, marketing, sales, and then dealer's choice, right? The DDYF.
BSA, Business Strategy Analytics, and then dealer's choice.
Okay, yeah. And so I made a spreadsheet and I put points for operations experience, points for BSA, all the different things. We have some community aspects that we asked for in that role. So made a spreadsheet and then scored everybody. So instead of just looking at the resume and like going off of gut, like how do I feel about this resume, I scored, and then I allowed myself 1 point for like, I don't know, I just like it.
I had no idea this is the process.
Well, this is Emily's process. This is Emily's process because
patented process.
Trademark.
And you scored the highest out of all 50 candidates that I reviewed. I wish I still had the spreadsheet. I don't think I have it anymore. You only missed 1 point, and it was because you weren't local. So I was giving 1 point to local candidates because we like to, give folks within our community an opportunity to. And so you were a almost perfect score candidate from your resume.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that, going back to the actual conversation that we were supposed to be having about networking, something that you did that I don't even know that you remember is that we met way before the Women's Forum. You reached out to me like 6 months before. It was like in September, or it was like it was something like that. And because when you introduced yourself, you're like, "Hi, I'm Kai." I'm like, "Yeah, we've met." And you reached out to talk about just like roles and understanding more about it. And so like the second time we'd had a Zoom, it was after the Women's Forum. Am I doing this right?
It was after the Women's Forum.
And so I think something that is a theme with you, and a theme when you're thinking about networking, is keep reaching out. I think that people can get discouraged because we are very busy people. Even getting this scheduled was like a whole rigmarole. And I think that people can get discouraged really quickly, and you can't in sports. You just can't. Like you were one of like 300 or 400 applicants. Every internship has usually around 300 to 500, especially marketing. So Cassie, you're listening to this, like 500 people applied for yours. And I think that that's where it can get discouraging, because you are up against a lot of people. And so you have to have kind of like the drive to want to do this. And I think that you can show that in the way you network. I've known people who put together spreadsheets of like, I talked to this person this time. I'm going to check in. You're going to check in here. You're going to check in there. And so that's a part of this networking that I think people don't understand, especially if you're trying to switch into sports. Or you're new to sports. You're going to have to build something like that, because you just don't have the end. And you're going to have to keep showing up to different things. You're going to have to show up to that conference. You're going to have to show up to that networking or that happy hour. Even if you don't drink, like, you need to be able to be flexible and when you get someone's card, you got to reach out, knowing you may have to reach out several times until they actually can get back to you, because it may be their busy time. So those are type of things that I in listening to your story, and also thinking through like who've been really successful networkers. Mm-hmm.
No, I agree with that. And I think, like you said, you're like, for applications, you're getting hundreds of applicants, and I'm sure you get hundreds of people just emailing you like I did and saying like, can we set up a conversation, or I'm interested in the role. And you have to find a way to really differentiate yourself. And you're not really going to have that opportunity unless you continue to try to build that relationship and show them that you care. Because oftentimes it's like the person you're trying to talk to is going to be really busy, and it's not your fault, or they don't want to be ignoring you. They just, have a lot of things on their plate. So like, by you showing that you care and giving that level of, interest to them, you're going to stand out, because not everyone's willing to do that. And not everyone, has that level of like, okay, I'm going to follow up in this amount of time, and is really trying to build that relationship rather than just, meeting with the person once.
Yeah. It's interesting. You just made me think. So CJ knows I do this. So once a month, I scrub my LinkedIn and I go through and I take calls with anybody who wants a career call. Well, not anybody. So I have a few rules for that. You can't be asking me for a job. Mm-hmm. You can't be if you're reaching out about a specific role and you want to talk to me about that, I won't take it, because as CJ mentioned earlier, it's illegal for us to do that. Every single applicant has to have the exact same experience. So we're just not able. We're legally not able to take those calls. But if somebody just reaches out, and Kaya has the most beautiful reach out that I've ever seen, if you reach out in a way that is genuine and just asking, if you're just asking me for 15 minutes of my time, I will give it to you every single time. It might be 2 weeks from now, it might be 3 weeks from now, whatever. But so I do those every single month, and I probably do, I don't know, let's call it 10 to 15 a month get scheduled. Do you know I've never had anybody follow up with a regular cadence afterwards? And I've been doing them. So
really?
So they really started when I started working for the 49ers, right? Because when I worked for a transportation company, nobody wanted to talk to me. Like, go figure. But ever since I started with the 49ers is when we would, we get these kinds of reach outs. And so I've been doing them for about 5 years. It certainly increased as my role changed. And so it's more now. But I don't have a single person who still regularly reaches out from those hundreds of calls. Yeah. And so what a miss, right? You get somebody on the phone, you make a connection, like just keep that connection, because I'm sure there were people that I talked to that I was impressed with a year ago that I've forgotten about. And if they had kept in contact and then a role comes up and I think, oh, Kaya, she just reached out again. I've been talking to her for a few years now, and it's like sometimes it just takes that like perseverance to stay fresh in someone's mind so that you're there when the opportunity does come up, because we're small, or sports teams are small. So and people, it's real cool to work here too. So people don't leave. So there's not a ton of turnover, right? So you've got to be like in the wing when that opportunity comes up. So that's interesting when you were talking about it. I have not one single person that is a regular contact who follows up.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I think part of it's probably like you meet with someone once and then a few months go by and you're like, well, I don't want to set up another call because I don't have anything to say to them, which is like only normal. But I think what people don't realize is even sending, a brief email like, hey, we talked about this. I've done this since I last talked to you. It could be 2 sentences, even like that short little check-in, put that in the subject, like meeting check-in or something like that is just going to like really go so far for you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think sometimes people also feel like, I already took up 15 minutes of their time. I don't want to take up more. Take up more.
Yeah, take it more.
Take up as much space
so what?
as
They don't respond to you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like you have nothing to lose. And I think that's probably my number one thing is like nothing to lose. Like I could write to 1 million people, maybe only 10 get back to me, but within those 10, maybe like there'll be a few of them that are incredibly valuable connections and that, like are the ones that last a few years. Yeah. So really just take the risk and reach out because you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, and I love that follow-up idea. And you're not even asking for more time. But you're making that connection, right? Like you mentioned that it would be a good idea if I XYZ, and I just want to let you know I took you up on it. It was a great experience, and then I feel all good because I'm like, oh, they took my advice, and then you're in my mind, it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be another 15-minute phone call. So I think that's like a really great idea. And then can you kind of talk about, so one thing that is my biggest,
I'm just laughing at you.
One of my biggest, because I like this stuff, but CJ knows I nerd out on it.
Yes.
One of my biggest pet peeves is if you've taken all this time, written me a LinkedIn message, I've agreed to speak to you, and then you're not ready for the phone call.
Oh my goodness.
Is like my biggest pet peeve. So can you tell us how you prepare to talk to somebody once you've gotten the yes to talk?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll do, I probably had done a little bit of research on them before I reached out, but I do an insane amount of research. I'll go through their LinkedIn, kind of memorize whatever's on there just so I know, and then I look up their name on like podcast, the app on my phone, and I try to find a podcast that not only have maybe they're just like mentioned in it by someone, or have they spoken on a podcast, or I'll look up articles, look on Sports Business Journal, like all these different resources just to try to find anything about them, because like by the time I'm on the phone, I'm not gonna like recite all the things that I've learned, but I'm ready to kind of like be able to ask them very specific tailored questions that I know will I'm interested in, but I know also that will show that I care and who I am as a person, and that they'll be able to really answer, and I'll be able to learn from them rather than just me going on looking something up online. I'm really trying to figure out these calls are, yes, it's to kind of get my name in there and get people to know who I am, but it's also really to each person has something so unique to offer, and if I can just I really want to just be able to pick their brain and get any information that I can that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I just do an insane amount of research and try to figure out great unique things to ask them.
And it works. I mean, I remember again, it just goes back to everything you do shows us who you are. And so when you were talking to me, I remember specifically you pulled something obscure from
Yes, I remember it. It was a podcast that you'd done a few years back, and there was a quote that I really liked. Yeah. So I pointed to the quote. You said that I remember it. It was something along the lines of you have a garden and you're constantly looking for people who are going to help you grow that garden and help those flowers grow and like tend the garden and things like that. So I drew some connection to that and showing that like I was going to be one of those people to help the plants grow, and it really was a testament to who I was too.
Yeah. It was just like, well, all right.
But see, it stuck with me.
It did. It did. Well, look at that. It stuck with you. It's actually my answer to like when sometimes people ask me about culture and I throw it back at them. Not throw it back is the wrong word, but like I like kind of give it back to them, where I think for a long time I was like annoyed by the culture question, but now I changed it to like, why, like it can't just be me. And it can't just be the people at the organization. We are looking for people who want to grow the culture that we have created here. And so I think that like it's something to do with that. But I can't believe you remember that. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's true.
And so that's really how you lead. Like that's how you let those conversations go. Is your research leads it. So as opposed to having a what's it like to work for?
No, it's very, they're always specific questions to the person. And there can be specific questions to the organization, of course, but usually it's in relation to like what that person does or how they fit within that organization. So yeah, I always have a list of questions prepared, and I rank them from like the most important ones to least important. I always have way too many prepared just in case, the conversation goes a different direction or we end up being able to talk for an hour, which does happen sometimes. Like a 15-minute conversation will turn into 30 minutes or an hour. So just always being prepared for what could happen.
No, that's awesome.
I know.
I love it.
So good.
Yeah. Thank you for answering my questions.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you for, responding to me and allowing me to meet with you.
Well, I mean, again, it goes back to like, I think I probably answered you like 2 weeks later or something because my, schedule is ridiculous. But you were ready when I did. And that's a thing, like something that you said that reminded me, like I really get so many reach outs like daily. I often don't get back to people sometimes for 2 months, like, and people will not answer me at that point. And I'm just, cause I'll even be like, oh, here, find a time that works for you. And they don't ever answer. And I'm like, you have to understand that in the business that we're in, you can be that busy where you're just like, I really am trying to get through hundreds of LinkedIn messages, and I have to sort through and find the students or the people who are interested in getting into this space. And so you have to be kind of patient and be ready when an opportunity does come up.
Well, and I think remembering that like we're just doing that to be nice.
Yeah.
That's not part of my job. Like nobody told me to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's not a part of like, hey, we want you to take X amount of calls per month. We're just doing that in addition to our regular day job. And we're doing it because going back to the culture, that is the culture we want to create. And hopefully, I'd be interested to hear, but hopefully what you find when you reach out to sports teams is what I find from sports teams is they're overwhelmingly warm. They're just warm environments and a lot of love. CJ and I talk about that a lot, having love in the workplace, and what we mean when we say that is respect and goodwill. And so there's a lot of that in the sports world, right? And so reaching out to those people, like you have to remember, they're just doing it out of goodwill. So if it takes them 2 months, if it takes them 6 months, just like CJ said, being ready when the call does come up, right? Being prepared. And we just saw a PowerPoint deck about being ready when your number gets called. It's really, really important. And so I think that's important to remember too. Like this is a side quest.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's also something like there's a balance between, like you were saying, like, obviously you have to be persistent. And that's part of the reason that I was so successful with networking and getting here. But at the same time, I think I always approach interviews with like this gratefulness, because like you said, not a part of your job description. You do not have to be giving anyone your time. You're doing it out of like the kindness of your heart, and probably also in part because like you went through it too in some capacity, and like you know how it feels. But I always, like, if I see the conversation going longer than the set time, so like we have 15 minutes set, it's now 25 or 20 minutes, I'll say, I know you have, I was like, please, like, stop me whenever. I could go on forever, but I know you're very busy, so just feel free to stop me whenever. And sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, I do have a meeting coming up, I have to go. And other times they'll be like, no, don't worry, I'm enjoying this conversation, let's keep talking. But I think you always have to remember to be respectful in those conversations as well.
Yeah.
And then I think one more really important thing that I did talk about in the Students for the Stadium speech that I gave is that every conversation that you have is valuable no matter how it goes. So I always say that if you can learn just one piece of information from the person that you're speaking to, which I can promise you you're going to, it's a valuable conversation. And a lot of the sports industry, like no matter what department you're in, it connects, and you are going to succeed when you kind of understand how all these different departments work together, or even just what another department does.
Yeah.
So if you can learn anything, it's just going to, like, even if it doesn't make sense that it will in the moment, I promise you, like, it's going to be valuable for you later on, and just help you. So really just treat every conversation as a valuable conversation, and that really should inspire you to have more conversations and network more.
You reminded me of a particularly not great interview I had not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. And this person was just not very interested. And because they didn't really see how this person that doesn't work in the department that they wanted to work in could help them. And so they didn't treat the conversation seriously, didn't come prepared. It was very, very obvious it was a transactional experience for this person. And I wish them well in the work that they do.
Wherever they are.
Because they're not here.
They really don't care.
They probably don't. But it was really sad for me because I thought this person was super, super talented. And I recognized that they did not see the worth in having a conversation with me. And so how would that feel to other people in our organization who didn't work in the department that they wanted to work in? And like, how would that make other people feel to have someone who in their interview made someone feel unworthy of that conversation?
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My last question would be, what should the communication between the applicant and you guys look like before and after the interview? So do you prefer that they reach out to you beforehand and then thank you afterwards? Like, how should that work?
Sure, you can reach out beforehand. Be okay with the fact that we may not answer. And I think that sometimes people can, I don't know how people see it on the other side, but I often will not answer because I am busy, but also because I don't want to, if I answer you, then I have to answer everybody else. And I just like to keep it clean. And so for me, I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to answer you thank you either. But you shouldn't expect it anyway. But know that we do read them. I read every single thank you that I get. I read all of the emails. It's just, I just don't find it appropriate to answer them.
And I know some managers track the thank yous too. So like that also goes into their consideration for hiring.
Yeah.
CJ, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today on Inside the Oval and for sharing your valuable insight. It has been so helpful to learn about what you look for in resumes and interviews and how to network. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. You can catch more episodes of Inside the Oval on SiriusXM, 49ers.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Kai Binetti, and this has been Inside the Oval. Thank you for listening.
Yay! This message is brought to you by the Capital One Venture X card. Venture X offers the premium benefits you expect, like a $300 annual Capital One travel credit for less than you expect. Elevate your earn with unlimited double miles on every purchase, bringing you one step closer to your next dream destination. Plus, enjoy access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. The Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.